Welcome to Conversations with Ann Elizabeth, the podcast inspired by my book, I'm a Registered Dietitian, Now What?, where I have the absolute joy to sit back, relax, and have a conversation about nutrition with a variety of people who share their personal story of passion and purpose, especially registered dietitians. My conversation today is with registered dietitian Brenda Shannon. Brenda was one of the best preceptors I ever had in my internship, and she currently works with a very specialized population with unique nutrition needs. Make sure to go check out my book, I'm a Registered Dietitian, Now What? It's available for purchase at annelizabeth.com in paperback and in ebook. And you can also catch up on my blog post and everything Ann Elizabeth. There is truly something special when I can share a story of a registered dietitian who has had a huge impact in my life by not only being my preceptor and a great coworker, but she's now one of my closest and dearest friends. Brenda chose to become a registered dietitian a little bit later in life and has worked in a variety of settings with her current position as a registered dietitian in Iowa who works for a very special population of individuals at Glenwood Resource Center. This woman in person has taught me a lot about being a great dietitian, and she inspires me every day, both personally and professionally. Please enjoy my conversation with Brenda. So you and I, we've known each other through work and through my internship, but there's a lot that I haven't heard about your past and your journey to getting to the point where we've met. So I kind of want you to take me back to when you were thinking about being a dietitian or found your passion for dietetics, and take me back to those moments when you had that aha moment.
Okay. I was a non-traditional student, I guess. I went to college for a year and then came home and started working. And it wasn't until I started I had switched to another job and got married, and I was taking some night classes just to try. I wanted to get a degree, and I was doing business. I don't know why. And I took an accounting class and a basic nutrition class, and I hated the accounting class. And I found myself very interested in the nutrition class, and I was reading the books and doing very well and very interested, and that was kind of my aha moment.
So what kind of made you, nutrition and accounting, like two completely different things. So how did you get to that point where you decided taking both those classes?
For whatever reason, just because I didn't know what I wanted to do, it just seemed like business was, I don't know, just a kind of a broad,
good, easy,
something that I could,
sure,
kind of mold myself into. And I just needed the nutrition class as an elective.
Oh, okay. And I had that similar thing too, where I took nutrition as an elective, so I can kind of relate with you that way. Yes. That you're like, I'll try it, we'll see how I like it.
Yeah. So then I just kind of started checking with different people and looking into it to see, where, because I was at Bellevue University at the time. So just started kind of researching and seeing what I would need to do, where I would need to go to school. And just came home one day and I said, I want to be a dietitian. But my family is very supportive. So. And
you said you were non-traditional. So like at that time in your life, where were you kind of at? Not that you have to tell me your age, but you were a wife, and you were you a mom at that time too?
No, I was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
So I had been working at ConAgra and was working in the trading and processing. So I worked for a grain trader at the time. So I was her assistant and was doing that, and nothing related to what I do now at all.
Sure.
And just they had tuition reimbursement, so I decided to take some classes, and so that's kind of when I had my aha moment. So yeah, I was well into my mid-20s when I decided that. So then I continued to take classes at night. And then once I got to the point where I had to take classes full-time during the day, the core nutrition classes were only offered during the day. So then I left where I was at and went part-time at ConAgra in the product and development lab, and then did my classes at UNO.
So when you were at ConAgra, ConAgra is also a food company.
Yeah.
So do you ever relate those two things maybe sparking a little bit of interest in nutrition?
When I was taking the classes, I was on the trading floor. assisting. So no, and it wasn't until I had started the actual nutrition classes full time that I went over to the product and development lab.
And so what did you do? Because that sounds interesting.
We worked in the test kitchen at ConAgra. So basically when they're rolling out products, they'll do like 3 different, they'll pick a product and do 3 different versions. So then they will have consumers from the community come in that sign up to come and do taste testing. So we ran all of the tests. So we would heat up the food and then we'd slide it through the window and they'd fill out, a questionnaire about it. Yeah.
Was there anything that you remember that was significant about was there any food product that was interesting that you tested?
We did, we did all of the healthy choice meals and then Marie calendars, like the pot pie. So when we had all the leftovers, then we would get to eat stuff. So the crust on the pot pie and like the fruit pies were wonderful.
Were they delicious?
Yeah. So we'd be like in the kitchen after
just
everyone
kind of
left.
sneaking it in.
Yes, trying everything.
Well, that was kind of a good balance, though, between kind of doing that and then doing your classes at UNO during the day, which is funny because we actually crossed paths at UNO and we didn't even know it.
Right.
Because I was doing kind of the same thing you were at that time, and we had taken a few classes together because I remember seeing you from afar in my classes, but we never ever talked during that time.
I think I came in somewhere one day and talked to you briefly when you were working over in Council Bluffs somewhere. And briefly, but we never really.
We were like totally, we didn't,
opposite.
It was interesting how that, I would think about that and I think about us having classes together, but not knowing each other in those classes. And
it was very different dynamics because there were, like you would have been more of a non-traditional at the time too, but there were a lot of, younger,
and even older.
Yes, very diverse.
There was a very big diversity in that. So you were at UNO, you did your dietitian classes. Did you ever waver during that time? Were you always like, I am on the right path. This is exactly what I need to do with my life. That's good.
Once I made my decision, it took a long time, but I was like, this is what I want to do.
So you toughed out school.
Yes. Yes.
And internship time, how was that period in your life when you were trying to figure out where you were going to go or what you were going to apply for?
It was kind of intimidating and stressful all at the same time. I applied for Iowa State and I think I might have applied for the Med Center. I was thinking about that today. I think I applied for the Med Center and Iowa State. Iowa State kind of appealed to me just because it was 6 months. And I was married and I didn't want to be away from, gone for a long period of time. So I put my application in there and I was chosen. So
that was easy given for you.
Yes.
So tell me about, I know that you went to Iowa State at one point earlier before you went back to school as a non-traditional student. And then you did your internship with Iowa State. So, was there any connection of I started out at Iowa State and now I'm back to Iowa State, or was it completely separate for you?
It was kind of completely separate. I went to Iowa State right after I graduated from high school and I just went for a year. At that time, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. So I just went and was taking some pretty general classes, and then after, the year was up, I went home for the summer and I didn't want to go back. So I just started working. But it was interesting then coming back to Iowa State for the internship.
It was like full circle.
Yeah, it was. It was like the first time I was here, I had no idea. And now I know exactly where I want to be.
So how was your internship with Iowa State?
It was good. It was just different. It was kind of stressful. It was, just very busy. I didn't enjoy the food service part of it as much. I enjoyed more of the clinical and the community. I'm trying to think where I did rotations. I did WIC, extension, and then food service at Creighton, where I ended up working. So working down in the kitchen, and that was good. We had a great preceptor for the kitchen, and I did it with a good friend of mine, Kim. So that made it fun. We were kind of, helped each other through the day, but it wasn't my passion at all. So
you kind of figured out during your internship that you were more that clinical community that was what drew you in.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the clinical part of it. It was definitely intimidating, because, I mean, it's completely different from classes.
I agree.
Yeah, I know at one time Iowa State did their internship where they would do classes and then it was more through the undergraduate, but then they would go out into the hospitals. And I think that would be good because you could sort of apply it. So I didn't feel like I was quite ready, but yet, I learned a lot from it.
So did you do clinical at Creighton then as well, or did you do that at another location?
I did it all at Creighton.
All at Creighton.
Yeah.
So most of your internship was there.
Just a few rotations with community were outside of Creighton, and then food service and the clinical at Creighton.
Now, were you working at the same? You weren't working at the same time.
I did not.
So you quit ConAgra.
Yes.
Did your internship. And then during that internship process, you were at Creighton. So when did you start kind of applying for jobs, and what was the landscape like at that time? And
we finished up in December and started applying for jobs, and there wasn't much of anything at all. All four of us were kind of in the Omaha, Council Bluffs area. I was in Southwest Iowa. We all applied for a job at WIC that was Southwest. All four of us did. It was based in Red Oak, but it was Southwest Iowa. And I actually got that. So,
oh, wow. So out of all four of you that went to school together, you were the one.
Right.
And you didn't get beat up?
No. So yeah, then one of them went on to do like food service work, and so it was just interesting because there wasn't a lot at that time.
Was that kind of discouraging to you?
A little bit.
Because you felt like you did all this school and you did this internship, and then there was just nothing.
Yeah, not a lot to
available for you.
Yeah, because I had looked at clinical jobs, and there just wasn't much of anything at that time.
Did you ever feel like you could just go back to ConAgra and maybe work, or did you have that desire, or were you worried?
Didn't really have a desire, and it was maybe a month went by, and then I got the job at WIC. So then while I was there, they would actually let me study for my exam.
Oh, nice.
On our off days when we weren't in clinic. So I just had to have somebody, sign off on my work.
So how was WIC? How long were you there?
I was there from January to August. It was good. It was a great experience. It wasn't what I wanted to do long term. And it was kind of hard because at that time I was mid-20s. I didn't have kids. And so you're trying to educate people on things that you really didn't have a lot of experience with. So I'm sure they were like, though. Oh, here's this young, right out of college person telling me kind of what to do.
Sure.
So it was challenging, but there were a lot of them that really were interested in what you had to say. But then you could tell some of them were just kind of there to pick up the WIC checks and be on their way. So it was definitely a good experience and a definite eye-opener to what life was really like.
And as a dietitian too,
yes,
working a good first job type of situation for you. Mm-hmm. So you're at WIC, and you knew that it wasn't going to be your forever job. Did you kind of start doing some job searching then while you were still working there?
I actually had talked to Sherry from Creighton, who I did my internship with, and they had let me know that they had a job open, so I applied for that, and they called me on my birthday, which was in July, and offered me the job, and it was just...
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do clinical, and obviously it was a lot more money, just better benefits, and more of a good fit for me of what I wanted to do.
When you think about clinical nutrition, what was the biggest draw for you when it came to, because obviously you had a strong passion, a strong pull towards clinical. What was that thing that drew you into clinical?
I think it was just interesting. Just the labs and Creighton was very interesting because, you saw a very diverse, we would sit at lunch and just discuss different things different cases that we would see, and definitely things you wouldn't see in your basic hospital because it was a level 1 trauma center. So, it was exciting, but kind of depressing. When you looked at, the different
levels of care and
disease states. So, but definitely, it just definitely was interesting, and I enjoyed what I was doing, and the people that I worked with.
And I think that means a lot. I think a lot of times as dietitians, we get so focused on getting that job and all the excitement that comes with the job, but then it's really about the people you work with.
Yeah, it
in
is.
your position.
It is.
That help you like your job.
Yes, for sure. And I find a lot of people that you talk to, they either really like their job but don't like the people they work with,
Yes.
or they really like the people they work with but maybe don't like their
Don't
job
like
as
their
much. So
job.
it's good when you can find that good balance.
So that was good that you made that connection with your preceptors during your internship,
Right.
that they thought of you
Right.
during that time when they were going to hire someone
Right.
too.
Right.
So what was your specialty then at Creighton?
I did cardiac. I was on the cardiac floor, so I did a lot of cardiac education. So that was where I spent a lot of my time.
Could you still do a cardiac education right now if you were asked to right on the spot?
Yeah, probably.
Dietitian consult, cardiac
Dietitian
education.
consult. And it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, there were some interesting ones. There were people that really didn't care, and there were people that were so glad you were there because they wanted to make a change with their life.
What do you think the ratio of that was?
It was probably more that didn't want it, but I think a lot of them were coming back from having bypass surgery, and so there was just a lot of, they were dealing with the pain and all of the other issues, so they weren't quite in that place for someone to come in and try and tell them how to change everything all at once. I think it would be overwhelming, especially for those that weren't already, I guess, practicing a healthy lifestyle
prior to their
Yes.
surgery.
Yeah.
And that's a huge lifestyle change
Yes.
if you weren't practicing that prior to.
Very
And
much
commitment
so.
afterwards of cardiac care afterwards too. And speaking of, those challenges as a clinical dietitian, I think, like you said, it's exciting, it's interesting, but there is a lot of barriers when it comes to clinical nutrition and being in a hospital setting. So just speaking to that, like the compliance, what about some other barriers that maybe you experienced?
I think the hospital setting in itself is a barrier just because there's so much going on that they aren't always open to it. Oh gosh.
Challenges, like thinking about being a clinical dietitian. I mean, we obviously will talk about when we were together, but just times of, just struggles as a clinical dietitian isn't the primary focus in a hospital setting. I guess I feel like, we're kind of one of those ancillary
Right.
positions, and
Yeah.
we always don't get the attention we need.
Correct.
Maybe.
And sometimes I think you spent the time putting, you had to do the assessment, and then you would make the recommendations, and then they'd sort of just hang out there and weren't.
What happens to those?
Yeah, what happens to those? So, not always, I don't know, you didn't feel like you were a partner with the doctors and the residents. So, and that's something that I have in my current job where I pretty much make recommendations, or they'll call me and say, I need this. Can you just make that happen? So we didn't get that in the hospital setting. I didn't feel. So.
And you did clinical for how long at Creighton?
I was there like 4.5 years.
4.5 years. And did you find that, when you think about your career there, did you get to a point where you got burned out, or did you just get to a point where life changes kind of led you to a different, career? What was the change that you...
I mean, I think when I first started, the cardiac floor was a great place to start just because even though I had done my internship there was still a lot to learn. And on the weekends when I would work by myself, going down to the ICU was extremely intimidating. I'd be like, okay, please let this be easy.
What am I going to get today?
Yeah, you never knew. I mean, there were some pretty complicated things that would come in. So I think, the cardiac was great, but then after a point, you can only do cardiac education in the hospital for so long before you get burnt out. And I, while I was at Creighton, I had my first child, and then I was pregnant with my second child, actually, when I found out there was a job opening in Glenwood, which was the town that I was living in, as a dietitian there at the Glenwood Resource Center. So it was one of those things I wasn't really looking to move, but one of my friends from high school, her mom worked there, and she called and she said, hey, this job's available, and the dietitians there's not a lot of turnover.
Okay.
So it was something that I knew I needed to look at if
For even just your life balance with work and your family and.
Yes, because it would be right in my town. And so I put in my application and then had an interview there. So it was just kind of everything, focusing a little bit more on family and being closer to the kids.
Which is, that's a thing that a lot of people face at some time in their life, which is good.
Yes.
So you made the transition, obviously.
Yes.
You put the application in. They loved you, of course.
Yes, I guess. I went for the interview, and I remember coming home, and my husband at the time said, "So what do you think?" And I was there like 3 or 4 hours.
That's how long your interview was?
Yeah, I did a written interview, and then 3 people interviewed me for probably an hour, and then they took me on a tour. So my head was kind of spinning. It's definitely a different environment because it's a state job and it's with intellectually disabled and physically disabled individuals. So it was nothing that I had ever been around. So it was a little intimidating and a little overwhelming. So I was like, I don't really know. He's like, if they offer you the job, will you take it? And I'm like, I'm not sure. So then it was probably 3 to 4 weeks later, they called and offered me the job.
So you didn't hear anything for a whole month?
Yeah.
That's kind of
I had some time to process it.
Sure. Well, yeah. So did your feelings change over those 3 to 4 weeks?
I was still unsure about it, but it was one of those things that I'm like, it's kind of like long-term care. Things are already kind of mapped out for me. So, it would just be going in and, tweaking things as I go along. So I decided to do it. I just thought it would be a good fit for my life at the time, being close to the kids. It was no holidays, no weekends.
Oh,
which,
fantastic.
We didn't have to take call. You didn't have to.
Which clinical is completely different.
Yes. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. If nothing else, I can always go back to a clinical job in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Because those are always available.
Sometimes,
a lot of times.
Yeah, more so than others. Yeah, this was kind of like a now or never. I either needed to take it or the opportunity wouldn't come up for a very long time. Because the dietitians that I went to work with there had been there, I think, like 17, 18, and 19 years. They had all been there that long when I started.
That's not intimidating.
No, not at all. So it was kind of one of those opportunities where if I was going to do it, I needed to do it then.
And you had some experience with these residents because at Creighton, we would get them as admits. We would get them for a short period of time, but there was a little bit of touch point to that. So there's maybe a little premonition to where you ended up and working at Glenwood. And so the official title of your facility is?
It's Glenwood Resource Center.
Okay.
So it's similar to, like, for those that are around the Des Moines area, it's similar to Woodward.
Okay.
The Woodward.
And how many residents do you actually take care of yourself?
Myself, I take care of around 80. I have a caseload of 80.
By yourself?
Yes. And probably 25 to 30, I would say, are on enteral feedings.
Okay, so a lot of nutrition support that you work with, too.
Yes.
And you didn't do a lot of that when it came to cardiac care, probably.
Not a lot, because it kind of went back to we would write recommendations, but they weren't really followed. So I didn't have a ton of experience with writing that. So when I got there, you pretty much...
You are it. You're the nutrition expert.
You write the orders. Yeah. So like now, I pretty much write the orders. I write the orders for the formula, the rates, how much water they're going to get. Or if I don't know for sure, like I'll check with the doctor and I'll be like, what are you thinking? Give me some parameters. And then I just write the orders and they sign off.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is, because that's the piece of the puzzle that I didn't get when I was at Creighton.
Well, and a lot of dietitians don't have that piece or will ever have that piece that they have so much faith in you and they trust you as that nutrition expert that they are just like, you go for it, Brenda.
Yeah.
We will do whatever you recommend.
Yes.
So let's talk about, so you are transitioning from cardiac educations to enteral feedings. How is that transition into such a different kind of care as a clinical dietitian to, I guess you'd be still considered a clinical dietitian in your setting.
It's still clinical, but it's going to be a lot more team oriented. I spend a lot of time on the computer. I spend a lot of time in meetings, but I work very closely with the PTs, the OTs, the speech pathologists, and we have a group basically that oversees everyone. There's a lot of dysphagia issues. There might be positioning issues, just a lot of different things that we work together. So the speech pathologist will dictate what consistency, but I'll put the orders in for that. But I work very closely with them on a lot of the people that I see for diets. So completely different team approach. Yeah.
And so specialized too. Everyone is so
Yes.
uniquely different.
Yes.
That there's probably not one resident that has the same.
Correct. I
diet
mean, I
order.
have people, and my job is completely different from, I work with, it used to be 3 other dietitians that did what I do, but now it's 2, but their caseloads are completely different. So mine are more medically fragile. Most of them are in a wheelchair. They're not talking to me, where they'll get phone calls like, Amy, I don't like what I got for lunch today, or just a lot of different dietary issues where they will get phone calls, or they'll be walking around campus and they'll be like chasing them down, wanting to tell them,
About their lunch
that they don't
today.
like their diet. So I don't have as much of that.
Do you like that, since you went from such an interactive education setting to not a lot of interaction?
I kind of do, because it's one of those, you get into a role and then you kind of get specialized with what you're working with. So I always tell them, I'm like, I would not know what to say when when they call and they're totally mad and stuff. So yeah, I like what I'm doing. So.
And how long have you been?
I have been there, actually, it's 12 years today.
12 years today?
Yeah.
Well, happy
November
anniversary.
1st. Thank you. Yeah.
And do you kind of feel like this current role that you're in, do you feel like that it's kind of fulfilling your passion as a dietitian and kind of your purpose when you go back to thinking about your younger years of deciding you wanted to be a dietitian? Do you kind of feel like you're on the path to kind of fulfilling your passion as a dietitian?
I do. And a lot of people talk about going back to school, and I don't have a big desire to go back to school and further my education. I mean, I like what I'm doing. I like the people that I work with. I mean, I like working with the interdisciplinary, and I like the clientele that I work with. But it also fits with my life too. I can drop my kids off at school and then go into work. And if they call and they need something, I can slip away to the school and run something to them and come back. So it kind of fits my life overall, I guess. And it's nice just to be able to, I can pretty much, when I leave work, and I don't have to take it home with me.
Which is awesome.
Yes. Yes. I mean, there's days,
Sure.
like any job, but for the most part, when I leave work and then they don't call me, and
You don't have to deal, and you don't have to work weekends, and you don't have
Yes.
to, yes. And I think that's a great point. Just that life-work balance is so important, I think, as dietitians. And, it's like maybe it's not the most ideal, exciting situation,
Right.
but if it also gives you that good commonality with your home life and your work life.
yes. And I work with some really great people. I mean, the dietitians that I work with are wonderful. I couldn't ask for nicer people to work with. And
Yes.
same way with, I've become very good friends with the PTs and the OT, the different disciplines that I work with. So it's kind of like a little family.
I was going to say it has to be, because you've
Yeah.
been there for
Yeah.
this amount of time. And like you said, there's not a lot of turnover. There probably isn't
No.
a lot of turnover with your PTs and your OTs and your speech therapists
Correct.
either. So
Yeah.
you do get to really know each other, and being in a smaller community too.
And you get to know the clients there very well. And even if they can't talk to you, they can still talk to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you probably noticed.
Yeah, they can communicate with you, and you form bonds. Definitely.
Tell me about a bond that you have formed with one of your clients.
Oh gosh, there's and the clientele ranges from, we have a 13-year-old to people in their 90s. So I mean,
Oh, wow.
I have very diverse age range. But there's a couple like in high school, and they'll, be in the office for something, and they'll stop in. And I have one individual, since he came a year ago, he's lost like 45 pounds. And so it's just cool. And he'll be like, don't I look great? And it's like, yes, you look great. But, it's just about being healthy and, making good choices and just, living a healthy lifestyle. So it's cool when you see that.
It sounds like you have a really great variety.
Definitely.
That they're not all the same. You do have some of those clients that you can interact with. And
and a lot of them that are so cute, they don't talk. But you can sit there and talk to them, or if you're talking with a nurse, they'll be sitting there listening and kind of laughing, and we'll talk to them and stuff. And we'll be like, are you listening to what we're talking about? So it's cute. It's sweet.
And I think it's, just amazing that you have these people just need so much special care, and they need that love and attention because they don't get that a lot. Is there a lot of family interaction?
Kind of depends on. Some of the families come a lot, and a lot of them, they don't have family that comes there, but they've been there so long. The resident treatment workers are their family.
Their family,
and they treat them like family.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And I think a lot of people, I don't think many dietitians would ever think of your role as being a dietitian. I know before I ever came to work at Creighton with you, I'd never heard of that place before. So I didn't even know it existed.
Correct.
And so I think this is a good conversation so other dietitians know that there is places that need dietitians like this. And
I know when they would come into Creighton, we didn't exactly know what to do. Because
they're so specialized.
Yes, they're so specialized, and like they weren't, they would be getting like not a lot of calories, and we'd be like, they don't fit in like the normal mold of how you figure calories for,
sure,
just a general population. So I think at Creighton that was very intimidating.
And then you got to see the back end of it, of why those things were happening.
And maybe a med changes and they start gaining weight, or, there's just a lot of different factors where they don't just fit into like the BEE or however you're going to figure it.
Their calorie needs and their protein needs and, like you said, their water needs and those kind of things.
Right.
That's very interesting. Did you do any special education for this job, or did you kind of learn everything on site?
I've just pretty much learned everything on site. My boss at one point asked me if I would take the CNSD, and I don't think it's called that now, from listening to Sherry talk about the tests and stuff. But we don't do any nutrition support there. They don't do IVs there, and so it wasn't something that I wanted to do at that time because the CNSD is so specialized with all of the electrolytes and additives, and I just didn't
labs.
I didn't see myself using that, and it was just at a point in my life I had 2 small kids and just studying and taking the tests. So just your basic CEUs, but most of it I've learned on the job and just working, with the other dietitians and then working with the doctors, kind of trying to figure it out.
Well, and I think with these clients, you do have to get to know them and just kind of learn along the way. Do you kind of feel that way?
Yes.
To help meet their needs.
And what you might figure out from one, then you'll go, oh, yeah. And you might see it, with different ones. But, they all have different unique challenges. So, I've just kind of learned it along the way. I had the basics, of course, from, working in the hospital. But, you just kind of, I think that's true with any job as a dietitian. You get the basics in school, but anything beyond that, I think you get into your niche and you have to learn it as you go.
Absolutely.
And hopefully you have somebody, a good mentor or preceptor to kind of guide you.
Well, speaking of that, you were so graciously one of my preceptors when I was an intern, and I think it's a great thing to talk about because I know that, as a non-traditional student, you always question, am I really doing the right thing?
Right.
And I think that certain preceptors help confirm that, and you definitely were one of those preceptors for me that helped confirm I was on the right track. And so how did you feel about being a preceptor? Just thinking back to the time when I was your intern, what do you think about being a preceptor?
I think it's hard. I think some people are just natural teachers. For me, it was just hard. But then I'm kind of one of those moms too. Sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself. But you had interns that were really good and some that weren't as good. So like with you, it was super easy because you were very self-motivated and self-assertive and just wanted to learn and would jump in. I think it was easier too with the ones that would just jump in and, you know, try and figure it out a little bit on their own. But precepting, I mean, and we've had some at the resource center as well, but it's not a natural role for me, I guess.
Okay.
So, but I'm thankful that I had you
because
we've developed into very good friends.
And I think and you know, maybe it wasn't the most natural role for you, but I feel like as preceptors, we do make an impact. We may not realize it at the time.
More than you think.
Yes. And then later on it comes up.
And it comes full circle.
Yeah, I really did impact someone. Do you ever regret being a preceptor?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, that's
Not
a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you recommend other dietitians really consider being preceptors?
Definitely. I mean, in the role that I'm in now, we have students come, but typically we only want them for like a week or two, only because a lot of the stuff we do is pretty static. I mean, things don't change a lot. We'll change things as needed, but there's typically not dietitian emergencies for me. Typically, though, if there is one, there'll be several that day. But for the most part, we just felt like it was hard for us to offer a huge variety. Like we could give basics, but not something where we could have someone for 8 weeks.
Sure. And I think there are different roles that clinical is just a given. You know, that's an easy setting. But for your job, I can understand how that would be difficult to be a great preceptor, give them the opportunity that they need. But I'm glad that you feel that you had a good experience being a preceptor for the majority of times. And I think that as dietitians, we need to encourage people to be preceptors and to be good ones. At least, you were a great one.
At least try it out and, you know, see how it works. Like we took, we're at Glenwood, you know, we took them for a while and then we were like, well, we'll do it, but we only want it for this amount of time.
Sure.
So yeah, you have to definitely figure out what's best for the intern and what's best for you and kind of find that balance so that you offer them, you know, the best experience.
Absolutely. Because you want to have that. You want to, like, you know, you think about your internship, you're like, oh my gosh, it was crazy. And then you're like, I want other interns to have a good experience too. So, but yes, you are a fantastic preceptor. So thank you so much for being wonderful and sharing your story with me. Because I think there's a lot of times that we never talked about your previous story and how you got to where you are today. And do you feel like you are kind of, you know, are you excited about the future as a dietitian? Do you feel like, you know, there's great opportunities out there for dietitians? And
I think, yes, especially from when I graduated, like 15 years ago, there's so much more to offer because back then like
you said, there was no jobs.
there weren't jobs, but it was your basic community, food service and clinical. And now like you have the retail dietitians and sports nutrition, and there's just so many different avenues and a lot more opportunities.
Which is exciting.
Yes, it is. Very
And you
exciting.
have to think of you 15 years ago. You helped pave the way for that. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Well, since you answered such intense questions, I have some fun questions to ask you. Okay. And you can just tell me whatever comes to your head.
Okay.
What's your favorite food?
I love pasta and I love seafood. So
Together,
they're amazing.
Dreamy.
Give me some seafood Alfredo and that's dreamy. Yeah.
Yum, that sounds great. What's your least favorite food?
Probably celery and tomato juice.
Together in a Bloody Mary, or?
I do not like either. I do not like Bloody Marys, and celery is, I
did not know this about you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite drink?
Alcoholic or non?
Both.
Non-alcoholic, I mean, I love water and I love sparkling water.
LaCroix. You are a LaCroix girl.
LaCroix kind of took over when I gave up soda.
Congratulations.
Yes. So still got to have that carbonation. Yeah.
The crack of the can.
Yes, that's right. and the bubbles. I enjoy like a fruity or cider beer.
Is there a particular brand that you like?
I like Red Strawberry, Angry Orchard, any of those. Just not your typical beer.
That's good. What is your least favorite drink?
Probably tomato juice.
With
Back
celery.
to that. Yeah.
What is your favorite smell?
Oh, gosh. Maybe just a nice perfume, or if you smell one that reminds you of someone, maybe.
I totally know what you
Yeah,
mean.
like you
Yes.
smell one and you're like, oh, that, and where's that perfume? Or you know what I mean?
Sure,
Just
you
something
associate
that,
it with
yes.
someone.
Yes.
I like that's. I can relate with that.
Yes.
What's your least favorite smell?
When I was working in my food service rotation in my internship down in the kitchen where they do the dishes,
Yes.
that hot, moist,
Milk,
musty
weird.
smell of dishes. It makes me, it's not
You
good.
can smell it right now.
Oh,
can't
yes,
you?
very
completely.
much so. Like you would walk through there and you just hold your breath.
You're like, no. Did you have to go there often?
When we were working in food service,
Yes.
we would go through the kitchen and it'd be like, yeah.
What is your guilty pleasure? It can be food. It can be anything.
Food would probably be Cadbury mini eggs.
For all of you, Brenda absolutely loves Cadbury mini eggs. Easter time is
And Christmas.
and Christmas.
Mini
They do
bowls.
have them there. Yes. And I share in her love of that.
Yes.
We do have that guilty pleasure
Yes.
similarity.
We throw that in the freezer and dig them out.
I do have a bag in my freezer
Yes.
for you. So,
Yes.
well, I am so happy to know you, and I'm so glad we could spend some time together talking today. And thank you for sharing your journey as a dietitian.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure knowing you and just following your journey as well, because you've done some great things.
Well, you're a huge
I'm
part
glad
of
I
it.
could be a part of that.
Yes,
So,
me too.
very proud.
I see Brenda quite often, but this year Brenda and I got together for the Iowa Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics annual meeting, and that's where we taped this conversation. Not only was it great to hear her full story, but it also reminds me how many of my closest friends are actually dietitians. Please go to AnnElizabethRD.com, where my book, I'm a Registered Dietitian, Now What, is available. And you can also find all the show notes and links to things Brenda and I talked about. Make sure to connect with me on Twitter and Instagram at AnnElizabethRD. And always, as I end my conversation, remember to be great always, find the joy in each day, and to start a conversation that truly matters.